Start
One
over.
second, folks.
We're gonna start. I'm gonna start over.
Okay.
There we go. Hello.
Hello. Uh, Cap says, there we go. Okay. Awesome. So, hello and welcome to the Modern Romantic Magazine, the podcast. We are your host, Emily.
That's me. And Trey.
That's
This
me.
way.
Ta-da! It's not jazz hands, it's jazz hands.
Just hands.
So before we get started, I just have to say, Emily, I'm really excited for our guest tonight. But before we get to our amazing guest, we do have just a couple of very quick announcements. First and foremost, we are on Spotify. You can find us now on Spotify. You will find us under Modern Romantic, where you're going to find the audio recordings to all of our podcasts that we upload. Previous episodes include our interview with Chef Josh, who is our in-house chef for Modern Romantic, among other podcasts, including the one tonight and the one that we just did the other week with Lord Mayor Bullfrog.
Oh yeah, Michael Stewart. I ran into somebody who knows him too by accident. It was really cool. But you do hear every podcast here first, and it appears on Spotify like a week later. So if you want it first, this is the place to tune in live. So yeah, that was. Thank you for your subscription, JSTEP Assassin.
Oh yes, thank you.
I knew you'd recognize that name. Yeah, thank you so much. And thank you so much for your subscription, Caponis and Fubiju. Sorry. Yeah, find us on Spotify, though. We need followers there, too. And also on Wednesday, which is 2 days from now, is we're having Brynus Leatherworks on in an interview with Mark and Elva. They are also on Twitch. They stream also on Monday nights, and they're from Orange, California. They did the armor for an episode of Lucifer, and I don't know this episode, and I don't want to spoil it for anybody, but it's Rinus. If you go look them up on Instagram, you'll see the pictures from that, and we're going to have them on Wednesday, talk about their leatherwork.
Really great designs. I've watched a couple of their streams and recordings already. Really very, very good work. Monday the 31st is Kathy Herwald from Good Measure Pressed Down Bakery. We actually featured her in the Cozy Holiday Traditions issue of Modern Romantic. So we're going to sit down and we're going to talk all things sweet and tasty.
I'm excited about that. I wonder if she could push some of the cookies like through her camera at us so we can eat them.
Oh, you mean kind of like Charlie and the Chocolate Factory? How they push like the candy bar?
We should ask her. I'll send her an email and see if she can do that.
So that is next Monday. So have all of your baking questions, all your cookie questions, just have them ready to go.
And then on Monday, the 7th of February, which I don't know how it's February already that we're talking about, but we have our very own Amber Rose designs. Amber Rose has been in she's participated in a lot of projects with me. We've partnered up together and we've just conquered the world basically. And I'm not trying to pat my own back, but definitely hers, because her designs are amazing. And a lot of this I couldn't have done without her. So we're going to talk about her newest projects, of course, her beautiful work, and how she stands apart from other jewelry designers, and also just she'll be super uncomfortable with it, but we'll talk about how awesome she is.
She's such a delightful human being. Really very, very talented. And then we, at some point tonight, are going to talk about what super secret special plans that we are going to do for Valentine's Day. So stay tuned for more details through tonight's podcast.
Actually, I'm going to just put up a poll right now.
Oh, okay.
It should pop up in the chat. I believe it pops up at the top of your chat, and it should say, should we read love poetry live on Valentine's Day? And you can vote. The poll is up for 10 minutes, so you've got 10 minutes to do that voting. And hopefully I'll catch the results. This is my first poll, so.
So that poll is, should we read love poetry live on Valentine's Day? Vote now. Vote often and vote early.
And vote bullfrog if you were paying attention last week. We have 2 votes for yes already, so that's good.
Yes. Without further ado, Emily, would you like to introduce our guest for
I
this
would
evening's
love to.
podcast?
I'm so excited. We have Gillian Albinski and Douglas Young here from, what is it, like global headquarters. They're friends of mine, and I'm so happy to introduce them. Here they are, Gillian and Douglas.
Hello.
Yay!
Yay! We're giving you such uproarious applause in the chat. So,
What is it? Tell us how it is ruling the world from there. Is that difficult?
He's good at it.
What?
Ruling the world.
Oh, ruling the world. Well,
Yeah.
you see, one of our cats, Cappuccino, just came on the lap because it's the cats who rule the world.
That's right. That's right.
Speaking of cappuccino, we do this thing every week, twice a week, depends. Every time where we talk about what we're drinking from. So I have hot chocolate in a stoneware, handcrafted stoneware mug. I think they lost their connection.
oh no.
No, we had a cat
It's-
step on
it's a
them.
cat.
Oh, it's the cat.
She flipped it around. She flipped it around. She wanted to see what you guys were doing, but she doesn't understand how it works.
She's still learning.
She has problems because she's a cat, and we have a mouse on our laptop, so it's kind of weird for her. So anyway.
I could see where that'd be confusing. So I'm drinking out of a stoneware,
Your cup, yeah, right?
handcrafted mug with hot chocolate.
Mm.
What do you have, Trey?
I also have a clearly super handcrafted one-of-a-kind mug that I totally didn't buy from Walmart. It has rainbow Snoopies on it.
Okay, I remember that one. How about you guys? What are you drinking from tonight?
I'm drinking from Zombies. So
Ooh.
when I worked on Walking Dead, we lived in Sonoy, Georgia. The A is silent, by the way. That's how you know that someone knows what they're talking about. It is not Sonoya. It is Sonoy. And so
That's how they know too.
we can talk about Walking Dead, but
And Sonoy is a little town where it's headquarters for Walking Dead, where they filmed this series here. And I'm drinking from a mug from 2017-ish from a film called Gifted, which starred Chris Evans, Octavia Spencer, and a young lady who's now taking over entertainment. I don't know if you can see her or not.
there she is.
McKenna Grace with the cat that was in our film Fred.
Okay.
Yeah.
The cat's name is Fred.
Yeah, the cat's name in the film was Fred. I can't remember what the real cat's name was, but McKenna you can see in the remake of Ghostbusters, and she's got all kinds of projects.
Awesome. Well, that's one thing that we announced to the viewers before we started the podcast, and that is you both worked on a lot of projects together, but also separately. And so I wasn't sure all of those things, but one of them is, well, Gillian worked on Walking Dead, right? Maybe you should just say it. Maybe you should just tell it, because you're better at it than I am here.
Let's see. A little bit of history. Came from theater, got into film 26 years ago, and I was the prop master for 24 episodes of The Walking Dead, seasons 8 and 9. And it was quite an experience. It was some of the best and some of the worst days of my career, as is often the case. So, but it was challenging in a way that no other project has been, just because of the fact that nothing could be said. I'm a prop master, so I'm in charge of everything that the actors handle. The cup is a prop, the phone is a prop, the computer is a prop, the couch is set dressing, the couch that you sit on is set dressing, but the things that the actors handle and manipulate. So all swords, guns, and knives, and things that you stab zombies with are props. And so I learned a great deal about many fun things about how to work with visual effects to create stabbing devices out of anything you can imagine. was, yeah. It was really inspiring. All kinds of things I never imagined I would have to know in my life.
So if an actor has has a moment in a film where they take a couch pillow and they have to throw it across the room at somebody, at some point that is set to prop. Well, how do you decide where that who that falls on?
Lots of meetings. So I take a script, and unlike a theater script where there's a list in the back of all the props, there is no list for a film script or a TV script or a commercial. So I take the script and I break it down, and I mark everything that's like actually written down, like picks up a pillow and throws it. I write that down. Anything that's not listed that I think there probably would be in the scene, I write down, and anything I imagine that they might want. And I sit down and I talk to the director and the writers and the producers, and we go through and we work out the list. And then I take that list and I go to the set decorator, who would be the one who would do the couch. And I say, okay, they have to throw a pillow. Do you want to provide the pillow? Do you want me to provide the pillow? Are you going to pay for it? Am I going to pay for it? Are you going to choose it? Am I going to choose it? Are you going to bring it? Am I going to bring it? And that's a pillow. And there's 12 pages of conversations about things like pillows and coffee cups for any given episode or movie. And so it's a lot of communication. It's a lot of conversations. It's a lot of interfacing. And in episodic television, you generally only have 8, 9, 10 days with the script before it starts shooting. And don't forget, while you're doing that, you're shooting the previous script and you're wrapping the one before. So episodic television is extremely challenging to get all of those things to mesh together so that you've got everybody working together and everything shows up on the day when it's needed.
It sounds like it's way more work than anybody in probably any audience would ever realize.
I didn't know. When I had been in the business, let's see, my first episodic was in 2011. So I had started in the business in 95. Mm-hmm. So I had managed to avoid episodic, just didn't want to leave town, and there wasn't anything in Charlotte. And so finally, someone said, you have to come and do season 5 of Army Wives. It's going to be the last season. Please, please, please. I'm like, okay. So I went. It wasn't the last season. But anyway. And I remember sitting there with the producer, and she's saying, okay, and we do 7-day episodes, blah, 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 blah. And I said, and how many days off in between? She's like, oh, no, there aren't any days in between. Like, oh, I get it. Never mind. Now I understand.
No days in between.
So there's a whole crew of people who are working on the prep and wrap. And then there's another whole crew of people who are shooting. And they all have to interface, but they are almost exclusively separate crews. The production designer, the prop master, the costume designer, the set decorator, the producers, all those people are working on wrapping the previous episode and prepping the next episode while the current episode is shooting. And
keep in mind that often that you'll find that the directors change a lot on episodic television unless you're doing something called block shooting, and that's when you're shooting more than one episode at a time. You'll get the rare occasion where you get someone like Steven Soderbergh who wants to direct all the episodes, and sometimes they'll do all the prep up front. So then they go in and they, like on a show like The Nick, they'll shoot all the operating room sequences. Then they'll go to like all the Victorian house and shoot all of those sequences. It's a great economy of scale, but often in episodic TV, the disadvantage as opposed to a feature film is that the scripts aren't even finished yet. Often an outline for what's going to happen. They call it the Bible for the season, in which they have kind of an arc of what's going to happen. But the individual scripts aren't often written until you're starting production, because they often don't open the writer's room until right before the show starts going into production. Sometimes that's not always the case, but sometimes they'll open a writer's room early. But a lot of the times we'll start it and we'll be working on the first episode of a series, and then we don't necessarily know how it's going to end. They have a roadmap for how it's going to end, but things change over the course of time.
Do you get a lot of let me think about how to ask this better. How creative are you able to be in that role?
It depends a lot on the project, and it depends a lot on the other people that you have to coordinate with. So as a prop master, a lot of the control's the wrong word, but a lot of the impact that I have is what I offer as options. So I might know that we need coffee cups, and I talk to various people involved as to what those coffee cups need to look like and do, and how big they are and what color they are, and do they need to break, and all of the other things. How many of them do we need? But I'm the one who ultimately presents them with the options. So it's an interesting blend of being artistic and creative, but also trying to read people's minds to find out what it is that they want and how they want it to work and what they want to do with it. And then, of course, at the very end, the actor becomes involved in it because they're usually not part of prep. So you get on set, the director and the producer and the writer have all agreed on one thing, and then the actor has a completely different idea.
Right. And Gillian and I work in some similar territories and some different territories. On commercial, she often does production design, where she oversees all the visual elements. As a prop master, you usually focus more on what, as she said before, the actor's touch. And so, sometimes you get the opportunity to incorporate the actor's opinions into things, like when she did season 9 of The Walking Dead, and they did a time jump. And one of the things they wanted to create were a set of knives for the Daryl character. And so they brought Norman Reedus in because he had ideas, and he and Gillian kind of really, worked on that together. And what she ended up designing is, the stuff I believe he's still using. So, you really want to have that buy-in from the actors, because we often say that what the actors do is it not only grounds the actors in the reality of the production that they're in, whether it's sci-fi or historical or present day even, it allows them to have that physical, tactile thing they can touch, whether it's a cup or a cell phone. But it also gives a director, at least the directors who see it as the opportunity to use those objects to help guide their actors to find the beats they need to convey the emotional moments in the scene. Because a lot of times actors come in, they've got the dialogue memorized, and one of the ways that directors can help shape that scene is like, hey, why don't you take a break or take a breath in between these two sentences and pick up that coffee cup and take a sip and then say, I'm going to kill you. And that it sounds really minor, but it's cheers. And it sounds really minor, but it's a way for a director to really find a way to use the objects to work with the actors. And when we do props, whether we're a prop master or assistant prop master, when you're working in that capacity, you work really close with the actors, because, when you're dealing with food, you're also dealing with dietary restrictions, because sometimes actors don't, there's certain things they can't eat or can't drink. Gillian was the assistant prop master on Shallow Hal, and at the time she did that, Gwyneth Paltrow was macrobiotic, and she played a character who
ate through the whole movie.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Whole Foods didn't exist yet in Charlotte, North Carolina. So trying to find all of the, soy chocolate ice cream in all of Charlotte was a task. Yeah.
So you're the reason why it was gone.
Yeah. Every bit of it. I literally had a van driving me around town to all 3 health food stores to find every bit of it. Yeah.
It's a lot easier now, but I just finished a film for Amazon in which we had a lot of food scenes, and I had actors who didn't want to eat dairy. They want plant-based products, and it's fine but we had like a hamburger meal. So at one meal, I had a variety of like 3 different plant-based products for people to choose from. We had gluten-free bread for their buns. And we had, some veggies that some people could eat as opposed to eating anything else. And so, we also have to worry about things like what are they drinking, trying to find the alternatives for the alcohol, because the actors don't drink real alcohol. So you find whether it's non-alcoholic beer whether it's water, if it's in bottles that are, not clear bottles, because some actors will just drink water, or if you're drinking, there's actually non-alcoholic wine that's had the alcohol removed from it, which most actors love because it tastes like wine.
It looks like wine, which we appreciate. Because grape juice just never looks right. You spot it from a mile away.
Right, yeah. You're not having to dye water different colors to try to get it to match. Yeah,
done that too. Yeah.
Which we've done that too. Yeah. Sometimes you do it. Sometimes with like alcohol. Sometimes whiskey particularly. Yeah.
The brown liquors.
Yeah.
But another trick for the brown liquors is water and a splash of either Coke or Diet Coke or some sort of beverage that has caramel coloring in it, because that color is right. You can also buy caramel coloring, but if you in a fix, when you need to make something look like whiskey, a splash of Diet Coke will make it look like
it just tastes terrible, but it's at least it works.
Well, usually we say that if the food looks good, you shouldn't eat it. And that applies to a lot of commercials too, because they're bringing food stylists in to make this beautiful food, and the actors get so excited, and we're like, don't eat that.
It's been sprayed with hairspray. It's been sitting there for 3 hours
to get it to glisten.
Yeah, right.
Yes, and someone posted a pizza. Yes, pizza. You don't want to eat the pizza. It's horrible. I just did a movie where it was nothing but making pizza, and it's all about the pizza making. But it's the same thing. Like when you're doing soft drink commercials, most of the soft drinks have to be lightened in order to film appropriately on camera. Like the burgers for fast food commercials have to be, as Gillian said, sometimes sprayed with substances that you never want to eat to get it to look beautiful. There's a difference between the reality and the beauty sometimes, right?
Yeah. In the chat there, Archer33X is the chef we interviewed a couple weeks ago. And he said, as a chef, that pains me. He was talking to us about using a little more salt and things, and because that's how restaurants tend to make things more tasty.
Yes.
Yep.
So something that kind of struck me as you were talking is I never really thought about food being a prop. Like it would make sense in a movie if they're having like a fight scene with a bunch of food in it, but not just like as they're eating. What kind of thinking about all the props that you've done, what are some of your favorite props that you've had to come up with?
Okay, so I'm going to jump in and talk about some of Gillian's props, because she's kind of done some really cool things over the years. She was the prop master for Homeland for the first 3 seasons, including the first year in which the show upset Mad Men, which had won 5 consecutive Best Drama Emmy Awards and won Best Drama that year, which no one saw coming. But it was just such a great show. And she created some of the iconic props from that season, which she's going to look. Okay, so
here's a little book.
Here's a book you can buy, which is the good.
Here, let me do this so people can see. Give me a second.
What?
There.
So right here, we are seeing Damian Lewis, who played Brody in Homeland, wearing this suicide vest, which slide it over just a little bit here. You see Gillian beside Damian. She designed this suicide vest, this iconic suicide vest, which I believe is...
I remember that vest.
It's in the Hollywood Museum, something like that. And she also did something which is really cool, and I'll tell this funny story in a second. The Crazy Wall, Carrie's Crazy Wall. And she had a great team. It was Lucy Wilson working with her, and I think Tiffany Apple creating the graphics and stuff. And Gillian works really great with the actors and loves to get the actors involved, whether it's, we mentioned Norman Reedus for creating the knives. But what she decided was everyone kind of had an idea of what this crazy wall was. And what it was is Carrie had what was her mental condition?
Bipolar disorder.
She was a bipolar disorder, and sometimes she would be, up and down and up and down. But she was literally, her character had missed the 9/11 attack. That was kind of the backstory for her, is that she had missed it. And so she had always been like trying to find the next, wanting to stop it, because she always felt that she had missed that, and she had that kind of, as her baggage. And so she was really over obsessed sometimes with following the patterns. And so she created this wall of documents and stuff. And how is it described in the script?
Well, one of the challenges of anything artistic, really, but that I run into as a prop master or a production designer or an art director, is taking something that's the written word and translating it into a physical object. So when the script says that she has a wall full of hints and clues that are all color coded, great. What does that mean? Is that Post-it notes? Is that colored paper? Is that colored pencils? Is that magic markers? Is that highlighters? Is that construction paper? What do you mean colored? How is it, and how is it marked, and how do we know, and how is it laid out, and so there were all these conversations, and there were actually 2 writers on that episode. And so each one, I was doing diagrams and drawings and renderings and stuff, and we finally built a life-size board in the art department to like put things up and take pictures and send it. Because remember, they're prepping in LA and we're in Charlotte, and so we're having to go back and forth trying to get people to look at things and give more opinions on things. And in the end, I finally, we had come up with like highlighters and Sharpies basically as the color coding. And she has this manic scene where she's frantically marking things. And I put it up on the board to sort of say, okay, what do you think about this? And brought one of the writers in and brought in Mandy Patinkin. You want to pick it up from there?
Well, okay. So she wisely brought in the actor whose character, Saul Berenson, was the one who sees the wall after Carrie has been taken away in season 1 for being crazy. And there's some concerns that she might be also a terrorist at the same time, that she's flipped. But Saul comes into the room, Mandy's character comes into the room, and he sees this wall of information.
Actually, I'm going to correct you.
All right.
He builds the wall. She has all the information on the floor, and he figures it out and puts it on the wall.
Okay.
So he was the one who was supposed to have made sense of it. And I'm trying to get him to give me his idea. And he's like, well, it should look like a rainbow of color. I'm like, okay, but I still don't know how to physically do that. Help me here. And so he starts singing for me.
So what he starts singing from is Sunday in the Park with George, in which he plays exactly.
I know.
Right.
And I grew up
right
with Mandy Patinkin being an idol. And sorry, not from Princess Bride, but from Evita, from Sunday in the Park with George, from Yentl. And so he was the one, when I met him, that I was like, that had to take a breath, because I'm pretty good about meeting stars, but I had to stop for a minute when I met him. And then here he is, standing here singing to me from Sunday in the Park with George. And it was just one of those.
And
moments.
what he was singing was a George Roth song where he's doing blue, 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 red, 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 more green. It was lyrics are probably wrong, but he's singing about the colors as he's painting the pointillism that he does. And the fact that he made that connection, is so friggin' amazing. But also for Gillian, as a person who, remembers watching Mandy in that part on PBS with Bernadette Peters, to see that connection, that's pretty amazing to see an actor process that, and one of the things that I have to say, because we both came from theater before moving over to film and TV, is that that's always been the case for us. We've always found that actors who had that fundamental training and experience of starting in theater first come at the process completely different, because they come at it from that collaborative approach. And so if you can get those actors involved in the process, they understand that from theater, because in theater, you sit down, or in opera, you're in a big production space, and you start with everyone in the room together, and you do the read, and then then you start working on it, and everyone's part of the process. And so the lighting designers know what's happening, the costume designers know what's happening, and they have ideas and they're working on things. But as the blocking starts changing, they start adapting, they start making changes to it, because it is a collaboration, depending on the particular movements of an actor sometimes, or how they're using something. It happens with props, it happens with set dressing. And that's part of the excitement of it, which often you don't see in film and television, because it is much more compartmentalized. So when you get the opportunity to work with real theater performers who understand that, it's just so exciting, because they also understand sometimes the limitations of what you have. Gillian often says, in film, you buy 3 pieces of wood you may never use, where in theater, you buy 1 piece of wood you'll use at least 3 times. And they all understand that. So.
I'm sorry, I'm still a little stuck on the fact that you've met Mandy Patinkin, and you basically had George Seurat, at least the musical version, in like your general vicinity. I am a lot jealous.
He used to walk by my office singing. So sorry, cat again.
There goes Cappuccino.
My office was adjacent to. We had 2 sets of stages in the building. And so the bathrooms for stage 2 were on the other side of my office. So everybody had to walk by my office to go to the bathroom. So everybody would walk by my office. And Mandy classically, he loved to have a music stand. He always insisted on a music stand. So in front of his director's chair, he would have a music stand so he could put a script on it. And that was how he worked, which I thought was just so classy. And he would warm up working on his lines, but he would also vocally warm up, and he would sing as he walked. And so if they were on stage 2, he would walk past my office singing. And it was just the fangirl in me, the 14-year-old me was just so absolutely thrilled to have him walking by my office singing, a couple times a week.
What a phenomenal experience.
And, Mandy is just such a great human being. He's very compassionate, strong advocate for social justice, works with trying to help immigrants and refugees, and
animals.
And because of his time of living in North Carolina with Homeland, he's actually continued to remain very active in trying to help similar-minded people get elected in North Carolina. And during the last big political campaign, he did a number of Zooms to help candidates that he supported in North Carolina. And during the pandemic, he and his wife, Catherine Grody, actually became big hits on TikTok, thanks to their son, Gideon, who would film them doing bits around the house. And
I've seen some of those, yeah.
Totally check that out.
All right, so you have to shut us up when we talk too much, but funny story here. So the abbreviated version is Mandy fell in love with a chair at the Relax the Back store. And so I helped to organize him having one on the set. And he also wanted one for his trailer. So he got them. And then when the show moved from Charlotte to, I think they went to New York next? New York? Yeah. Virginia. I can't remember.
Went to Germany.
Was it Germany?
Germany.
Yeah. It wasn't me. That's all I know. It wasn't me. Obviously, they weren't going to take the chair from his office or his trailer. And he said, could I have those chairs? And so it was after the season, everybody had gone. And the producer said, sure. And so I went and disassembled the chairs and packed them into great big boxes. And Mandy sent me the credit card information to have them shipped to him. And then I talked Gideon through assembling the chairs in their mountain home, which is where they do the TikTok videos. So when we watch the TikTok videos, it's like, oh, there's the chair. Oh, there's the chair.
Now we're going to watch for the chair, too.
Right.
And if you ever watched Criminal Minds, when Mandy was on it for the first season and a little bit second season, you remember his character's name was Gideon, and it was named after his son.
Oh.
Wow. Okay.
Put that away for trivia night.
Right.
With
We
Lord
should have
Mayor Bullfrog.
obscure past episode trivia one of these nights after we have enough episodes.
Yeah,
That'll be one of the questions.
that's right.
Somebody write that down.
So being prop masters and working through all these different through all of these things, through theater, through episodic television, through all these different projects, what has inspired you the most creatively?
Sleep.
Yeah, people always ask, what's your favorite, what's your least favorite, and as is often true, your least favorite is whatever you're working on at the moment because you're exhausted.
Right.
And you're fed up with the people, and I guess it's much like childbirth. You get away, you get some distance, and you get some perspective on things, and then you're like, it wasn't that bad.
I might miss them.
The people I miss, and the film and television is a very strange business because you work with this group of people, and even if you're doing episodic where you're doing the same, where you're going back for season after season, the people around you change, and it's not always the same group of people, and so you develop this. We're on set 12, 14 hours a day. I mean, there's a lot of hours with these people. You spend more time with them than you do with your family by far. And then the show ends and you just suddenly all disperse. And also, so often people are from various parts of the country. They literally disperse. They get on airplanes and leave. And some you may or may not see ever again. So it's a very weird way of living because you develop these really strong bonds with people that you're probably never going to see again. It's sort of like summer camp when you're a kid, but it's like multiple times a year, every year for the duration of your career. And I completely forgot what the question was that you asked.
Oh, it was the inspiration.
It's
Coffee.
Coffee. I get that. I think the summer camp analogy is really good.
It's often people who want to collaborate, and film and television, recorded media is much different than live events, which are a lot more collaborative because one, you don't have a live event until you have an audience.
Right.
Whereas the recorded stuff has a lot more hierarchy to it, much like the military. And usually a director is at the top of that. Sometimes it's a producer. Sometimes it's a star, depending on the vehicle for someone. And it's a lot of top down often. But when you have other artists who want to collaborate with someone, that makes it exciting. I mean, it's often, I produced in theater and directed in theater, and it's a whole different energy because often in film and television, you always realize there's someone who ultimately can have a different opinion than what you have, and it can change everything. And sometimes it's the head of a network who decides that you're not going to kill off a character. Sometimes it is another producer who decides they want to make a change, or a writer or a director or an actor who feels very strongly about something and you have to make a big shift. Or on a commercial, it can be the assistant of someone at the ad agency who says, wow, that's a weird color. Why are we using that? And all of a sudden everything's in a tailspin,
On the day. Yeah. Commercials are their own. So I know we didn't really do a good intro of what we do. So
yeah, I'm sorry. We keep getting interrupted on that.
we have both been we both came from theater. We've both been doing film production in one way or another for 25 years. And I work primarily as a prop master in feature films and TV. And I work as a production designer / art director, depending on who you're talking to and what they call it, in commercials, music videos, print shoots, that kind of thing. Douglas also does all of that, but we also often work together. And so I'll be the person doing the prep end of things, and he'll be the person on set doing the keeping people happy, because he's really good at that. And so when we tag team back and forth, that helps give you a little context that we actually work together. We live together, work together 24/7, and we are still married 25 years later. So he's like,
yep, applaud.
Sometimes it does make for interesting discussions on the ride home in the car about how horrible your boss was that day. But yeah.
I was going to ask about some of the great things or challenges about working on projects together.
I think the biggest challenge is sometimes it's hard to find an off switch because, which is great for production, but it's sometimes bad because one or both of us may still, it's like there's still stuff we have to do, and it's hard sometimes to find a balance. And sometimes it's better when we're working on different things because, everything is not such a major event, because when one of us is at home versus one of us is working on a job, it's like, you start talking about how something's really tough at work, and then you have the other person going, yeah, well, I had to take the cat into the vet today, and
But you can also get a different perspective when we're on different jobs, and it's not personal.
Yeah.
Whereas when we're both working on the same job, everything is personal.
Yeah.
Right.
Good or bad. And like he was saying, if we're working on a job together, we are basically on the clock 24/7 because we're not just at home. We're at home talking about the job. Did you find that? Did you order that? Did that come in? Did you buy that? Where is that? Did you put that away? Did you clean that? It's constant. The weekends are spent, well, we might go to the grocery store for us, but it's like, oh, wait, we've got a list of things for the show too. Let's do that while we're here. And there's nobody to tell us not to because both of us will benefit from the fact that we're going to take care of it off the clock.
Right.
So, we have had our moments on set. We've never right out screamed at each other, but we have had our moments, and not on set, I should say. We're very good about, people on set generally don't even know that we're a couple, but on the truck or in the office or just with our crew, there are certainly moments where the tension builds and we know how to push each other's buttons. And so
Yeah, and the hard thing sometimes is just, I think all artists have this problem sometimes. Some people it's work, right? Some people it's just a job. And but when you care passionately about what you're doing, and also when you have like other people that you're responsible for, you're concerned about making sure they have the resources they need and also the tools they need to be successful. And when you're balancing those things with budgets and having to advocate for them and make sure they have what they need, it becomes a lot because it's not just creating the prop or designing the commercial. It's, HR at the same time. It's resource allocation and budget management. And, that's its own sort of creativity in and of itself. And you don't always get that immediate satisfaction of seeing a project. We did this great commercial for Goodyear starring Dale Earnhardt Jr. called Made. And, to be honest, it was just an incredible commercial to read. And the Malloy brothers directed the commercial. And it was kind of hard to do because we had to do a lot of work in a short amount of time. And we did it at a smaller track that no longer exists. But the emotional beats of that commercial, it was rated as the most popular commercial in the history of Goodyear. And when you watch it, you just feel that sense of sort of, I don't want to say pride, but just sort of fulfillment of having been a part of something that means so much to so many people. And, it was a well-written commercial, but all the elements we did because, it's, well, here's the kind of story of what it is. It's called Made. You can Google it. And it's about how Dale Earnhardt Jr. was made, how he was molded. And at the same time, it was about how tires are made and molded.
But we were not allowed to go into a tire factory to shoot such a thing.
Even though there's one very close to Charlotte, because Goodyear didn't want to show off the proprietary information about making tires. So Gillian really had to design something about
to do little close-up shots that showed important details without showing what was around it, because we couldn't see what was around it.
Right.
But we still had to have the steam. We still had to have the spinning. We still had to have the parts to make it look like it was in the factory.
Yeah. It's kind of funny, but then when you saw the commercial in its totality, and Emmett and Brandon Malloy, they're great storytellers, and they're brothers, and we've worked with them a couple of times now. We did a great Carvana commercial with Jimmy Johnson, which was his first commercial when he switched over to Formula One, which was a really kind of emotional commercial because it was him walking down a starting line at Charlotte Motor Speedway, seeing himself in different phases from racing on a dirt bike all the way up to NASCAR and then the Formula One car, looking at younger versions of himself. And, you know, the Malloys, even though they're brothers, sometimes they disagree with each other. And when we did Made, they actually had some disagreements going on. And because they're co-directing, you're like, who should we listen to?
They were fighting at one point, and I interrupted with some piece of information about, and they're like, do not interrupt us while we're fighting. I'm like, got it.
And to their credit, and they came back and
Yes.
and we did this commercial with them in 2021 for Jimmy Johnson. One of the first things they did was apologize to us for that experience, because they said, you know, that was a really tough time. They had some other things going on, but they apologized to us, and good on them, you know, for actually remembering that. Because, you know, you let it go. People had bad days, and you just kind of have to let it go and move on and whatever. And but they were great storytellers, and they do incredible pieces. And when you get to make a commercial like that, it's amazing, whether it's 30 seconds or a minute, where you can tell an incredible, compelling story. You kind of it reminds you of why you're doing it, you know?
Absolutely.
I think one of the things that, having heard you tell all these stories, is how well you really play off of each other. I know you mentioned you've had maybe some moments with each other, but to still be together after 25 years, I have to take a moment to just kind of applaud that, and I find that incredibly beautiful. So congratulations to you both.
Yay.
And it's kind of funny because in the background, you keep seeing us look around because our cats are like chasing each other, and like they'll go up to each other and just like start doing the little thing right there.
They're our babies, so.
Yeah.
I get it. My mic fell earlier, and at least I had it muted because you would have heard the crash. But it was the cat. He came and knocked it.
They help. They're very helpful.
They're very helpful. Yes, super helpful.
Well, we are very lucky, because a lot of people say, how can you work together? How can you do that? You know, I can't wait to go to work to get away from my spouse. And, you know, as everybody does, we have our moments, but we're very lucky that we can do that, and we can get along, and then, you know, the moment comes and the moment goes, and we're back to working together and living together and doing our thing.
And, you know, just saw the question pop up from Archer33X asking, do you have any thoughts, comments on the recent Alec Baldwin tragedy on set, considering there's a lot of conversation around the prop? Yeah, we have a lot of thoughts about that. But one of the things I'm going to say is a number of years ago, there was an earlier incident that happened in Savannah on the set of the movie Midnight Rider, which is a story about the Allman Brothers. And Gillian had gotten a call to be the prop master on that film. She was production designer commercial. She got the call, and she was at lunch with her crew. And someone had just worked with Randall Miller, the director, and the people attached to it. And they told her, it's like, you don't want to do that. You really don't want to do that. I just did a movie with them called CBGB in Savannah. and
they don't get permits, and they hire people who aren't qualified, and they use PAs where they should be using qualified crew. And I was like, and I came home and told him about the call. He's like, you got to do this, the Allman Brothers. And I'm like, my gut's telling me no. No.
Well, and I told her, you should call around. I said, it sounds exciting. It sounds really cool. And so she made some phone calls. And, you want to do your due diligence. And she talked to some other people, and they all said, no, you shouldn't do this. And what happened was on day 0, it wasn't even the first day of filming on the project.
We're calling it camera tests, which is BS because it was actually scripted scenes.
They shot on a railroad track in which they didn't have permission to be there. And
on a trestle.
On a trestle.
Over a valley.
They had a bed on a trestle and a camera. And they unfortunately did not have permission to be there. But in film, I was talking about how it works like a hierarchy. If people say, hey, we're going to do this, there's a certain amount of trust you have to have. You believe that the locations manager has gotten the permission, that the producers wouldn't put you in an unsafe situation, that the director wouldn't knowingly endanger a crew, which all were live in this case. And unfortunately, a train came across the production, and there was just no warning, and there were a number of people injured, and our friend Sarah Jones was killed.
Oh.
And so what a lot of people, that was kind of a rallying cry in the industry called Safety for Sarah, SOS. Gillian knew Sarah and worked with Sarah on season 5 of Army Wives, and we always say, Sarah Jones wasn't just someone we talk about. Sarah Jones was an actual person that we know who should still be alive. Yeah. And so when it comes to a situation like Rust, there are protocols in place in which an armorer should always have possession of the weapons unless they're handing them off to the actor. You're not sure why the first assistant director took the weapon, presented it to the actor, and there's been a lot of
now we're getting conflicting stories. To answer the question without saying anything that we don't know firsthand is, for that to have happened, multiple things had to have gone wrong. Multiple people had to have not done all of the safety and security checks that they should have done, up and down the food chain. And there's always such a push to find the culprit. And the reality is there were multiple people along that line that could have stopped that from happening. And the thing is, we rarely know when an accident is prevented because it doesn't happen. Right. There are millions of blanks fired on movie sets around the world every year, and nothing goes wrong. Mm-hmm. But when something does go wrong, we find out about it. And so we will hopefully find out what happened. I know what my personal views are based on what I know from everything that the same people that all of you have read. But generally, weapons on set are safe if they're handled properly.
And there are a lot of protocols that have already been established in terms of how they're supposed to be handled, how they're supposed to be displayed to the crew, why these sort of things shouldn't happen. And yes, as Julian said, show after show after show has these things happen, or have these stunts happen without any incidents whatsoever. I mean, you do hear from time to time that a stunt has gone bad, not involving a weapon, but just a stunt itself. We sometimes forget that sometimes actors put themselves in danger. Tom Cruise on one of his most recent Mission Impossible movies, the film had that go on hiatus because he had an injury because he was doing his own stunt. These are serious things that happen sometimes, and unfortunately, it does affect the livelihood of a lot of people. So our hearts go out to all the people who were impacted on the production of Rust, because we forget that it's not just the loss of life and the injury to the loss of life to the director of photography and the injury to the director. But to be honest, I would believe that all of the crew would be out of a job, because I don't believe the production paid the crew, and also they have to go through that traumatic experience, which is really hard for a crew to have to deal with that and process that as you would with any loss of life. But maybe more so, as Jillian was talking about earlier, in terms of that sort of bonding that you have with any sort of production, whether it's film, TV, or live entertainment. You spend a lot of time with those people. They become your family for a while you're together. And so you just don't see that happening.
Yeah, like that becomes your summer camp family.
Yeah.
Like you said.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yikes.
Well, I know it sounds like kind of a downer, but it's a very somber reminder. We saw, unfortunately, during the pandemic, live entertainment shut down because it wasn't really safe to put people in enclosed venues and have them together when there's so much opportunity to spread COVID. And it certainly had a huge impact on people's livelihoods and their careers. And it helped some people decide to change what they were doing or what they wanted out of life. And we sometimes, it's very easy to take these opportunities for granted. But things can change on a dime, and it's not just in entertainment. We know it happens in other industries as well. But we're often very fortunate to do the kind of things we can do and have the life we do have, and sometimes we just need to be reminded how fortunate we are.
Yeah. Well, speaking of changing things on a dime, what is the one phone call you would love to receive regarding a dream you have, or a dream project even, or just the one phone call that you would love to receive?
That I won the lottery. That.
Well, it's funny because Gillian kind of got that. Jillian kind of got that with Walking Dead. She literally.
Yeah.
I had been a fan, watched episode 1 on the day it broadcast, watched every episode for season after season, every week. I was a true fan, and I got the call when I was actually on another project. I had taken over for a prop master who had stepped off a project. And actually someone I had worked with on Homeland said, "We need you." And so I went to Pittsburgh, and he came to Pittsburgh with me, and we were doing a show called Gone with Chris Noth and Danny Pino and
Levin Rambin.
Yeah. And I got a phone call. "We need a prop master. Are you interested?" And it started this conversation. And I'm like, this is a joke. They've got a list of people. They have to call 100 people before they can hire the guy from LA that they want. And I get it, blah, 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 blah. I've been there before. And the calls kept coming, and I kept moving through the system. And I'm starting to think, wait a minute, they're actually talking to me as me and not just a name on a list. And I remember sitting in the parking lot of a Staples store talking to the showrunner, and he and I had a great conversation. And at the end he said, "Well, I think we're going to be a good fit, because I thought this is going to be a 5-minute conversation. We've been on the phone for half an hour." And so that was the phone call where it was like, it was literally truly pinching myself. It's like, did that just happen? Did that really just happen? Am I really actually in the running for that was sort of the moment where I was like, this could actually be a thing. Because he was the last phone call before I got the offer. And so, that was the dream phone call.
And that was with Scott Gimple. It was who was the showrunner of the show at the time. He made all the chief decisions. And the weird thing was, only a few people with our show that we were doing in Pittsburgh knew why she was leaving early, because she couldn't talk about it.
I wasn't allowed to talk about it. I had all these NDAs and all these things I couldn't talk about, and all of this. Yeah.
And, you talk about sometimes the things you give up. That was when she had to leave. It was actually right before my 50th birthday.
Oh,
And I had
yeah.
a huge party planned in Charlotte, which we were going to come back for. But I'd actually canceled it because I had known a few weeks in advance that she was going to be going to Walking Dead, and I couldn't tell anyone why I was canceling the party. Just we told them that we were postponing. I couldn't. There, and she, the NDA was really strong, much like with a Marvel film or Star Wars.
Sure.
Film.
Well, there was a lot of secrecy around that show.
Yeah.
For
I
reasons.
was not allowed to post on Facebook where I was going, what I was doing. I mean, I finally asked permission, and they said yes. Once I'd been there for a while, that I was allowed to post where I was and what I was doing.
I mean, back in those days, it was the #1 show on television.
Yeah.
17 plus million viewers a week, and so you get it.
Wait, me? How did that happen?
That's so cool. I love that story.
And it is exactly how these things happen. Your name sort of filters through. People who have worked with you say good things about you, and it just sort of bubbles up. And I knew the prop master that was leaving, and so that helped too, because he could speak well of me, and he and I already had a relationship, so he could help with the transition. It was just, it was remarkable, just truly remarkable. I will say one of the heartbreaks of my career, though, was that I had put my name in the hat for Stranger Things, and I had a few conversations, but they already had somebody basically that they wanted, which is very often the case. Again, they do have to talk to multiple people,
sure,
but they're the person they want. And that one hurt, because I was like, if I'm going to go from Walking Dead to something else, it would be Stranger Things.
That would be really cool.
Yeah, it didn't happen.
Yeah.
That's okay. But then I watched the show and I'm like, oh, I'm so glad I didn't have to do that. I didn't have to find that. Okay.
So, Douglas, what about you? What's the dream project for you?
That's a bigger question for him.
It's a bigger question. I've spent time in film and television, live entertainment as well, and I've gotten to do a lot of cool things over the years. When I was at Blumenthal Performing Arts as vice president of programming, I got to not only present Broadway shows and produce local productions, but I got to bring in some really cool people like Elvis Costello and David Byrne and St. Vincent. And it's weird how sometimes those weird connections and one time you think one-off things just aren't going to go anywhere. But David Byrne keeps popping up in my life. And, like before the 2016 election, out of the blue, I find out he's coming to North Carolina to do a bike rally. And he wanted to get people out to vote. And I reached out to the person who was organizing. And I was like, wait a minute, is this David Byrne? And they're like, yeah, we can't get anyone to take this seriously, And so I was able to pull some favors and get people to give it some media attention. And because no one had really interacted with David Byrne before except me, I was interacting with David. And David is one of my muses. And just, I think his creativity is fantastic. And it was really funny because I had seen his current tour, American Utopia, when it came through Charlotte. But we got to see, it was actually the last Broadway we saw before the pandemic shut things down in 2020. And we lucked into tickets because it was the last weekend. They were going to close the show and bring it back in the fall, but no one knew they were going to bring it back in the fall. And there were a number of producers who were friends of mine that I had tried to reach out to get tickets, and we lucked into tickets at the last minute. And they were just inundated with requests for people trying to get in to see the show. We lucked into tickets at the last minute. It was Valentine's weekend of 2020. And David actually tells the story of coming to Charlotte to do the bike ride and to get people out to vote. And then after the show, we actually got to see David. We ran into David, which was kind of funny. And that was kind of one of those really surreal moments where you see it all coming back around. But, what I admire about David is him using his platform to try and get more people involved. And, for me personally, that's kind of where I am. It's how do we utilize the platforms that we have to get people more engaged, to make sure they find their voice as part of democracy, that they don't have that taken away from them. How do we make them feel like there's a reason to be engaged? And we certainly know that over the last couple of years, we've seen the rise of not just, a world in which we seem to kind of isolate ourselves even more, but people wanting to be more connected and finding ways to connect with people not only here in this country, but in other countries, and trying to understand that we're all part of one world. And how do we use entertainment? How do we use the arts? How do we use that to bring people together as opposed to, just make money? And I think there are ways to do that. And that's kind of what I want to focus on.
Is that vague enough for you?
Wow, I was going to say, quite a higher calling, however.
Yeah.
Which is another way of saying I'm working on things I can't talk about right now. So.
This is part of that whole world domination plan. I know. I get it.
I prefer to think of it as world democracy, but we'll go with that.
One step at a time.
If we have to force you to have democracy, we will.
That's right.
So, where's your creativity taking you now? Is that part of what you're doing now, or do you have other?
I just finished a rom-com for Amazon, which
called The Other Zoey.
The Other Zoey.
The Other Zoey. Okay, Zoey.
Zoey, right? Although it's initially Zoe and then changed right before we started shooting.
And he had to print the chair backs, which he has for some reason are also props. And
which is kind of weird.
He's like, is it Zoe or Zoe? I gotta know.
Yeah. But the cooler heads prevailed and went with the Y because the Y is funny, right? So that'll be on Amazon. And, it's a great cast with some international performers. It's Josephine Langford from Australia, my fellow Leo, who has a birthday the day after mine. Drew Starkey, who I've worked with not only on season 1 of Outer Banks, but also a show called Shots Fired, which shot here in Charlotte. Archie, Archie's name just went out of my head from Shadow and Bone. Sorry. And also we got to, have some fun people come play with us, like Patrick Fabian from Better Call Saul, and Heather Graham from Boogie Nights, and Austin Powers, and of course Andy McDowell from all kinds of great shows,
including one of my favorites,
Magic Mike XXL.
Oh, yes.
Was the prop master for. So.
I got to be the prop master on Magic Mike XXL. And so, of course, I'm 5'2", and, there's all these guys. And, and I'm telling them.
That's a good way to describe Magic Mike XXL as a whole, I think. There's all these guys.
All these guys. And I don't think I'm speaking out of turn to say I have never heard a group of men discuss hair removal and diet plans as much as I heard these guys talking about this.
Okay.
If you ever saw the movie, we're riding around in that van, in the frozen yogurt truck all the time. Note, when we are in the frozen yogurt truck, if there is a prop working, if it's a frying pan or a case of Molly or anything, when we're shooting back towards the back of the van, I am probably sitting behind the frozen yogurt machine. That was my spot, because we didn't have enough time to pull over, stop, get out, reset, blah, 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 blah. So I'm hiding back there so that between takes, while we're still driving, I'm resetting stuff and going back and hiding behind the frozen yogurt machine while we roll.
Wow.
We get some interesting things about, are you doing intermittent fasting? Are you doing high protein? Are you waxing? Are you plucking? Are you doing hair? What kind of tanner do you use?
Are they very vain?
Well, they had to be for this.
Sure. Okay. Yeah.
they had to be basically naked for big chunks of the show. And so they were constantly thinking about it. And I mean, they had a trailer that traveled with us that was a gym so that they could work out, which makes complete sense. Again, like I said, you're spending 12 or 14 hours a day on set. So they had a place to go and work out when they weren't on camera. And I will say they were all wonderful, sweet, lovely people. I loved every one of those guys. They were all wonderful. And I would work with any one of them again. There wasn't one person in that group that I wouldn't work with again. And that was a really amazing experience to get to work on for that reason too, because it's rare that you work on a show where to a person, everyone that you work with is someone you would work with again.
That's awesome.
So I can tell a funny story, Emily. You'll appreciate this because the production designer was Howard Cummings, who not only does Westworld but does a lot of Steven Soderbergh's projects. And someone asked if Kevin Nash, the wrestler, was in that. He was in that, yes. And Howard was trying to find a very particular. It was a set dressing piece because it's attached to something, but he was having trouble finding it in Savannah. And he said it out loud. He said, and to Gillian, he said, "I'm looking for a
sex swing. Like, we need a sex swing, and we're in this building where we can't tie into the ceiling, and we're not in there long enough that we can build something structural to hang it from. And I'm trying to figure out how we're going to do this because Joe Manganiello had a dance on a sex swing." And I said, "Oh, you can buy portable sex swings." And I visibly watched his jaw drop. But again, I'm 5'2", I'm this little girl. People think of me as this little Miss Chris. And
but if you need a portable sex swing,
I could tell you could buy a portable
she's
sex
your woman.
swing.
Put that in your head for trivia night as well.
So I then had to proceed to buy multiple sex swings because one had to be sent to LA for them to rehearse with before they came. I had to buy one to give to set dressing so that they could reinforce it so that it was strong enough to withstand take after take after take of this dance. Yeah.
So the funny story is, I did not work on Magic Mike XXL, except in the periphery. But out of all the guys, the person that Gillian had just didn't connect with the most was Joe Manganiello. And sometimes it's just you just have to find the right moment, the right opportunity, and sometimes it's hard finding a connection, because a lot of people are coming at you with you're trying to meet a lot of different people and stuff. And we were at the convention center in Savannah where they filmed the big finale of the movie. And we were getting on an elevator. I was visiting, and they were doing the big competition stuff. And I was walking out with Gillian in the service elevator and carrying a box for her. And right before the door closes, Joe Manganiello just jumps on. And he's like, "Hey, hope you don't mind." And he's like, "Great." And it's like, I knew that there was, she hadn't quite connected with him yet. And she introduced me to him. And it's like, "Well," I said, "it's great to meet you. Gillian tells me your number," and remember, this is the number with the sex swing in it. "Your number is her favorite number out of all the ones the guys are doing." And he goes, "Well, that doesn't surprise me. It's the dirtiest."
That doesn't surprise me.
Friends. Great friends.
So I will admit it, I had not seen Magic Mike XXL until very recently. So you both nodded at the same time.
We know. We're tracking you.
It's just really funny to watch some of the things and go, "Oh yeah, okay. Okay, so I have friends that have done that. Oh, okay, so that's a sex swing that she was talking about. Oh, that's the thing that she was talking about." Which kind of leads me into when you watch other movies or when you watch theater productions or when you're other things, how do you turn off your brain from going, Oh, no, I would hate to do that.
Hard. It's really hard.
I know that something is really good if I stop thinking about how did they make that?
Yeah.
How many takes did that take? You know, how did they do that? I'm glad I didn't have to do that. Oh, I wish I had gotten to do that. That is the sign to me when I walk out of a film and I realize that I have not been thinking about that. But the pandemic has made it worse because we sit here with the remote control, and so we can stop and go back and look at it again
and talk about it more. Yeah.
Nope, that doesn't match. Yeah. And we did it before, but it's even worse now because we haven't gone to a movie in 2 years. And so it's terrible. And even before either of us were really in the business, just being in theater. I mean, my mother hated to go to movies with me because even if I didn't say anything, I would start squirming at moments. You know, I was like, his collar was in, you know.
The hair was tucked. The hair was not tucked. What? Yeah. And, you know.
The cigarette was this long. The cigarette was this long. The cigarette was this long. The cigarette was this long.
And
even though I know exactly how those things happen and that the prop master or the on-set costumer probably had absolutely no control over that.
So let's
want to kill the editor for choosing those moments.
But let's talk about why that happens sometimes, which is a good thing to know.
Yeah, I think that's good. Yeah.
Particularly like let's say at meals and you see like the liquid level go up and down. It's not because
no one's paying attention.
The prop team isn't paying attention, but often it's because directors are more focused on the performance. And so they'll let a scene continue sometime and actors will drink something and it'll go down more and they'll keep going. And then when they edit it together, they'll take, you know, a master, which is the widest shot or a wide shot, and then a close up and then coverage where they go in for the singles on the person. And the levels will change because sometimes that's shot a little out of sequence and the directors sometimes say, it doesn't matter. I want the performance. I want them to get
take that line again, and they'll go back and do the line before the sip again. So it just keeps changing.
And then
they don't want to let anybody interrupt the flow by coming in to reset it and fill the glass. And you know, you might shoot. If you're shooting a dinner scene, you could literally shoot that all day long. You could shoot that scene for 10 hours. And so in 10 hours, it's not all going to match. Not every take is going to match. Something's not going to get refilled. They're going to drink at a different level, a different rate. And so when you see it all compressed into a 30-second scene, it's completely different. But it's one of those things that at some point you have to just sort of agree to live with on set and do everything you can to prevent it. But it is terribly annoying even when you're on set and watching it happen, because you can see what's happening. The director's going to use that take and it didn't match. They picked the glass up with the wrong hand and it's not going to match. Tell the script supervisor that it didn't match so they can put it in the notes, but the director wants to move on and that's what we got and it's not going to match.
Those are things I've found I notice a lot too. I was watching something last night and it was an episode of Grimm. And there's a scene in the kitchen where there's this giant clock above the stove and it's big enough that you can very clearly see every notch between the numbers, every single minute. And they stand there talking for, it's probably 3 or 4 actual minutes of the clock didn't move. It was 7:04 for the entire scene. And I just noticed it because the clock was so big and so noticeable what those little, like if they just used a smaller clock, no one would have noticed.
You know, you're right. I mean, that's the funny thing is clocks are often stopped. You know, clocks are kind of a tough thing because they don't take the time for someone to reset the clock. And it's a hard thing because what we often try to share with directors as fans of shows, it's when something is weird, it pulls you out of the moment. Mm-hmm. And while you're trying to maybe get a performance or an emotional moment, if they're smoking the cigarette and it's long in 1 second, and then it's short in the next time you see them, but it's long again when you see them again, we know something's not right.
They're obviously chain smoking.
And that's certainly wrong.
But it's distracting to the viewer.
Yes.
And even if they don't know what it is that's bothering them, they know something is off.
And the distraction pulls you out of the moment. And I think the fundamental rule that it's sometimes hard because it's like being in the eye of a hurricane for sometimes directors or producers to understand is they're so intent on capturing or trying to finish a scene or trying to capture that particular moment. And they're like, people won't pay attention. And then later they'll be like, what were all those comments on social media last night when we had that Starbucks cup in Game of Thrones?
Right.
So
no one's going to notice that.
we know the Starbucks cup in Game of Thrones wasn't left there because there was far too many people who
There is no way
that would ever happen.
There's no way that cup was left on there.
Yes,
and if it was, someone would have digitally erased it. They are digitally doing everything in that damn show. There is no way that got left in there.
But wasn't it ingenious?
It got us all talking about it.
That got you stop talking about the plot holes in the last season of Game of Thrones because you were talking about Starbucks cup.
It's almost like it's a conspiracy.
Yeah.
So
Doug has great stories about a show that we did called Walker Payne, and working with Sam Shepard, who was a very important character in the show and didn't like to fly. And so he had just come back from the cons and was driving from New York to North Carolina. And he was showing up on the day that he was supposed to start shooting. So nobody had any serious conversations with him about props and costumes and all of these things. He was just showing up on the day and, ready to walk on set. And so he shows up and he has to have a costume fitting. He has to have a makeup test. He has to have a haircut. He has to get his props. All of this is happening sort of while camera is waiting for him to come. And the director, who is wonderful and amazing, had chosen some things for him to have. Like he had a pinky ring with a red stone in it. And Sam was like, I don't like red. It's bad luck. It's blood is bad luck. And the director said, but look how good it looks with the green money, because he was holding money all the time. And he really brought Sam around the things that would help him find his character. But Sam kept asking for things. One of the ways that props help people is it helps people get into character. And because he hadn't been there to really rehearse and work on the piece and work with the other actors and work on the script and work with the director, he had props as crutches. And so he kept asking for all these props. So he had a bracelet, he had a ring, he had a cigar, he had sunglasses, he had gum, he had money between his fingers. He had all of this stuff on him. So one day Douglas on set.
It was the first day.
Yeah.
Sam, the director was Matt Williams. Matt, who's an incredible writer and director. Matt was found by the Carsey Warner Company back when he was just a theater writer. And they brought him in as a writer on Cosby. And
You just said just theater writer.
He was just a theater writer before he became a film writer. But and television writer, but he co-created Home Improvement and Roseanne, and he still gets credit for creating the characters on the Connors. So he understands characters really well, and he was just such a great director in terms of molding the actors into getting the performances that he needed to tell a story. I mean, a film is a director's vision, and television. A series is really a showrunner's vision, and there's a big difference in between the two. But with Sam Shepard, Sam was such, even though some people know him only as an actor in film and television, he is an incredible playwright. Having written things like True West, he is an incredible creator in and of his own accord. And so when you have an intimidating presence like Sam Shepard come in, just kind of like bulldozing in with, man, I got all these ideas and he should have money in between his fingers because that's what I saw in London. They do that in London and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, okay, wow, that's a lot of stuff to handle, Sam Shepard. And so Sam, we start the scenes, and Sam is basically running a dog fight ring, and he's taking bets on the dog fights. And so he's got all this stuff, as Julian said, he's got a cigar, he's got the sunglasses, he's got the ring, he's got gum, he's got, he's got dollar bills in between. He wants to hold the money in between his hands.
His fingers.
And so, we don't finish the entire scene before lunch. We go to lunch, we come back, and then you have to get them all propped up again. He goes, why the hell have I got all these props to deal with? And I just looked at him, and I was like, don't you even start, Sam Shepard. You asked for him, you got him. And he just started laughing, which was great because, he had a sense of humor. And that's great when you have an actor who sometimes bites off more than they can chew. Because the hard thing that sometimes people forget, particularly with props in film and television, is that you have to do the scenes over and over again. And so this is a constant battle we have with things like backpacks and luggage and computer bags, is you want to have weight in them, but you have to be cognizant of the fact that an actor may do the scene over and over and over again. And it can be a little tiring sometimes for them to be doing that. And so you'll have some directors who will be like, I want to make sure that bag's heavy for him. And you're like, okay.
By the time you get to take 30, their arm is going to be
the actor's like, why is this bag so heavy? And you're like, that way. I can take that out of your bag. You want me to take it out of bag? I can line your load.
I can help you. Don't you worry.
Yeah. For those who are listening to the podcast on Spotify right now, it is Douglas pointing first at Gillian, and then he was like, "Oh no, it's actually the director. Oh no, we can help you with this." And so they've been miming to this, just for a little bit of context if you're listening.
That's right.
I'm sure you never have played any practical jokes on set. Douglas, I see you doing that.
No, and here's why. I've never played any practical jokes on the actors because I think very strongly you have to have that trust.
Okay, I see that.
I have done things where we've had the actors in on stuff to do like jokes on like crew, like directors and assistant directors and things like that. And that can be a lot of fun. Like on Gone, which was Chris Noth's series, we had a great AD who it was his birthday. And there was a moment where they kind of like want to light up all the screens in the command center. And we had images of him in Hawaiian shirts all over the place, That was kind of fun, but it was just for the crew,
Okay.
I will tell a funny story for Gillian. Is that on Magic Mike XXL, Channing Tatum would often reset his props in not the same way. And the thing is, we always try to help actors, whether we're handing them or having a crew hand them to them, we try to give them to them the exact same way so that when they carry them onto frame, they're facing the same way. Because if you're watching an actor like this, and then you're watching an actor later on do this, again, it's that thing that pulls your eye away from you. And, you're like, what's different? It feels like it's just a little thing, but sometimes the straps on a backpack can be facing in a different direction, or they could be carrying it on the wrong shoulder, or consistency is absolutely right. Yes. But one day she had to keep resetting Channing's stuff, and she noticed that he would change it right before he went.
Just to freak me out.
Yeah.
To freak me. That was the purpose. And he's like, oh, it's just for fun. And I'm like, but if you don't change it back, it makes me look like I'm not doing my job.
Absolutely, brother.
And he didn't do it again. And it wasn't in a mean way. I saw a recognition that it's like, oh, it's not just fun and games. It's like if he misses it, if he forgets to switch it back, the point of stressing me out and playing games with me was not worth making me look foolish because someone found the Easter egg of it being wrong.
Well, and
right.
it does sound fun, but at the same time, we live in a world with HD, and on demand, and people can slow things down, and a lot of times people will try to read things into things that aren't right, and you're like, no, it was just a mistake, or you know what, they went with the wrong take, or whatever. Or sometimes they reshoot scenes, and
or a different unit shoots it.
Yeah, a different unit shoots it, or they reshoot it later because they realize they're missing something in the edit later, and they have to go back and reshoot it. And sometimes it's not the same crew.
And sometimes things are shot days, weeks, months, even years apart, which is something that a lot of people don't understand. Is that things may not cut together as smoothly as you want them to, and sometimes it's because this actor is only available this day, and this actor is only available this day. We had to put all their stuff together and all their stuff together, and this was at the beginning of the shoot, and this is at the end of the shoot. And, there's chemistry missing. Well, it's because the other person was missing from the scene. They literally weren't there, and we, of course, as I'm sure all of you know by now, we do not shoot things in order. So we may be shooting the last scene of the movie on the first day and vice versa. And so the actors really have to pull themselves back and forth between where they are from one scene to the next, because also sometimes, as Douglas mentioned, we will block shoot an episode or multiple episodes, and so you may be shooting scenes in the same room from multiple different episodes that are supposed to be happening in multiple different times of the story arc, and out of order with different people. And so the pressures that are on an actor to play all of those emotions and keep all of it straight, and then for the cast or for the crew and the lighting people and the camera people and the costume people and everybody else to get every single detail right. It is this enormous jigsaw puzzle, and I am still shocked when I see something come out that all the pieces came together, because we are just such a crazy band of circus players that all show up. Some of us have never met each other before, and yet we all show up. 150 people show up with dozens of trucks, and we all pour out of our vehicles and start doing our thing, and it happens. It just happens. And it's a lot of planning and a lot of people and a lot of coordination, and the sort of ironic part of it is that the thing that you notice when the thing is here, the thing is here, the thing is here, the thing is here, is the least of anybody's worries when you're actually shooting on the day, because all of those other things are so big and monumental, and then the little things that we end up picking up on the day when we're watching something with the cigarette changing are like, nobody cares when you're there on the day in a lot of ways, because so many other things are so important. And so
because sometimes you're just trying to finish and get an actor shot out, or you're battling sunlight going down.
Yeah, the sun's going down, or it's about to rain, or it just rained and we only have 5 minutes before the next storm comes in, or there's a lightning strike and we have to shut down. And it's just the number of things that impact production are so enormous. It really is just shocking sometimes that we ever get things finished.
We were there was a series we were on in which some kids were breaking into like a impound lot, and they were supposed to be attacked by a dog. And we'd shot the first part of the morning pretty well, and then we got to the point where they brought the dog over, and the director says, "So what's the cue for the dog to attack this character?" And the dog handler said, "Well, this dog doesn't do that." And there was a lot of people looking around going, "It's in the script, that's what they do." But it hadn't been communicated to the dog handler. They didn't get the script. It hadn't been communicated to the dog handler that the reason the dog was there, it was supposed to be trained to attack a character.
He thought it was just supposed to bark.
It was just supposed to bark, which a dog was competent enough to do. But we, were like, okay, well, let's try and shoot some other stuff. And the handler went to work with the dog to try and reorient it, to give it the commands it needed to, attack the character. And by the time we got back to it, we broke for lunch. Then it started raining during lunch. and then it rained for like 4 hours. We never shot those scenes. So we lost really most of the day because of that one little thing, and they had to reshoot it in a completely different place later, with a completely different dog handler. And it was just it adds a lot of stress, and it adds a lot of overhead to the production, because they certainly weren't planning to pay that production crew to come back and shoot something all over again. So
Wow. Sorry, little dog, you were fired.
the poor dog did exactly what it was. The trainer did exactly the same thing. One of the first TV movies we did, the Gillian prop master, and I was assistant prop master, was a Peabody Award-winning film called Having Our Say, which was
It was actually my first prop master gig.
Right,
Yeah.
as on a film side. Yeah,
Mhm.
it was a CBS film. It won the Peabody Award. It had Diane Carroll and Ruby Dee as the stars. It had a little-known actress who won, I think, 2 or 3 Tony Awards by that point.
Audra McDonald.
Audra McDonald. It had an incredible supporting cast in it, and one of the scenes, because it covered 100 years of the Delaney sisters. There was a scene of the girls as little girls and their father out making food for them by shooting a squirrel. And Gillian had to interact with the animal wrangler, and he had to bring the squirrel, and the squirrel was supposed to be up in the tree and on command drop out of the tree. Well, how do you think that went? Yeah. It's funny. I kind of sometimes want a job as an animal wrangler, because it never goes as well as you think it's going to go.
Never does.
There are a few. I take that back. There are a few animal wranglers who do. Sarah Clifford does a great job. Bill Berlanti, who has for years done like the dog and Annie the musical, and done a bunch of stage stuff and film stuff too.
And Max people were really good.
The Max People film that Gillian worked on, they were great. But a lot of times it's just you're having to manage animals. We did this great international paper commercial, which was supposed to have scenes set in New Zealand, and there was a sheepdog that was supposed to move the sheep along, and they brought in
Sheep wranglers.
Sheep wranglers. And you're like, oh my gosh, can you imagine what secret they must have to train these sheep? And so we were talking to the wranglers, and like, so tell us what the secret is. And it's like, oh, just watch us. You'll see what we do. And it was like some mystical thing. And so when it was time to move the sheep, they just slowly moved their hands, and it's like, shh, shh.
They're like, wait a minute, you're getting paid how much to do that?
To go shh.
Our first commercial with animals like that was an RCA commercial when they sponsored a car in NASCAR, and they brought in Nipper and Chipper, the RCA dogs, right, which is an older Dalmatian and then like a puppy Dalmatian, right? And there was a race car driver who's long since retired named Cale Yarborough, who was the star of The Spot. And Cale was like next door, grew up next door from my hometown and whatever. So that was a cool thing. But then it's like we were just fascinated by what they were going to do with these dogs. And so Nipper, which is the older dog, is supposed to be sitting behind the wheel of the car and looked like he was like on Valium most of the time, because he was kept almost going to sleep. And Chipper was a hyperactive dog that we found out they had painted like, what, half dozen?
I don't know. They had a whole litter of puppies, and they painted them all to match.
And what
Painted?
they wanted.
Did you say painted them?
Yeah, because you have to have matching dogs, and they're not going to naturally be matching dogs. So they were all painted to match
each other.
Interesting. Okay.
You never know. It's kind of like why when they shoot kids, a lot of the times they'll use twins.
Sure.
Because they can only use them for a certain amount of hours, but you also lose their attention span, and so you have to kind of trade the kids in and out and whatever. I know Mary-Kate and Ashley Olsen for all those Full House fans, right?
That's the big reference that everybody goes to, I'm sure.
Absolutely. So they needed Chipper to look out of the passenger side and look at the camera. And one of the animal, they had like a team of animal wranglers, and they had like Nipper and the half dozen Chippers. They had a person sitting outside of the window, and they're like, and action. And the person to get Chipper to look outside the window was like, chip, 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 chip. And the director is like, what is he doing? And the AD, the assistant director, was like, I don't know. And it's like, find out what he's doing, because we can't use any of this. And the guy is just like, chip, 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 chip. And the assistant director goes over to the animal wrangler and says, what are you doing? It's like, well, you want the dog to look this way. So that's what I'm doing. I'm getting the dog to look this way. And he's like, but we're recording the dialogue at the same time. And he goes, well, how do you expect me to get the dog to look this way if I don't call his name? And it was just like hilarious. It was so funny. And the dogs would, get kind of burned out, because the little tails would start wagging, and then they'd just kind of droop off. Their energy would die off. And they would just trade one dog out for another dog. Here's another puppy. It's another Chipper there. And it was just so hilarious. And we're like, wow, people make money doing this. That's pretty good. You have a way of, the last big animal thing I did was on January 6th of last year. We were doing a big commercial for NASCAR on Fox. And I was at a studio where last year NASCAR was going to Austin for the first time. And they wanted to bring in a longhorn and shoot it in front of a green screen and impose it on something later. So about the time that the Capitol was being under attack on the riots of January 6th, we're on a studio where the wranglers are trying to get a longhorn just to stand still long enough so they can shoot some film of it. And we're all on our phones going, is the Capitol under siege? What's going on here? And there's this longhorn in the background where the wranglers are just trying to get the longhorn to stay still. And it's like, what are we doing with our lives right now? What are we doing?
Alternate reality.
It reminds. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
I lost it.
It reminds me of.
This is the part where we'll just edit out because I don't know. I don't remember. I lost it that quickly. I'm sorry. I trained some chipmunks over the summer to climb into my hand.
Yeah. See, you can train
You
animals.
can be your own animal wrangler.
I think this is my new calling. Peace out, everyone. Nice.
That's right.
That's it. You're gonna go off. Someone needs a chipmunk.
Right. Right now it's limited to chipmunks. Although I have a friend who's teaching me to train or to make friends with crows and maybe ravens.
Very cool.
We'll see.
That would be a handy skill.
Yeah, I don't know about training him yet, but but I'm gonna work on friendship. We'll go from there.
Trust, absolutely.
We
Good
want to
stuff.
have her on the podcast at some point so we can talk about how to do this.
Come up. Are you going to come up?
Nope.
Oh, I thought Cappuccino was going to come up. She's like, training? I can do training. She's like, no.
No, I'm a cat. I'm not listening to you.
I'm not
You don't
gonna
have
do your
treats.
training.
There is no calling.
Right.
She
If
trains
one of us-
people.
She
Cats
does.
train people.
Mm-hmm.
They do. They truly do.
So, go ahead, Trey. You were going to say something.
I was just going to ask, so for someone that's wanting to maybe go into theater or go into your line of work working on episodic television or wanting to do some sort of props in some sort of production, what advice would you give them?
The first thing I will say is volunteer for both. In theater, there is going to be a community theater that needs your help. There is going to be a college that needs extra hands. There are going to be productions happening around you that need help. And there's always work to do in props and set deck and scenic elements. There's always going to be work to do. Nobody wants to do that work. I shouldn't say nobody. Many people want to be on stage. They want to be directors. They want to be writers. They want to be directors of photography. They want to do those things. They don't necessarily want to be doing the groundwork. And the reality is that's where most of the jobs are. Most of the jobs are below the line, whether it be theater or film. If you want to have a career and actually be able to earn a living and buy a house, that's where you want to be, because there will be work. And the same is true for film. If you want to get into the business, is volunteer. If you've got a college or university in your area, they're making student films. They need help. They need people with resources. They need people who are willing to go knock on doors. They need people who are willing to go and stand on the street and tell people they can't walk down the street. Get in there and do it and meet people and tell them what you want to do.
And sometimes you don't know what you want to do. That's the other part about it. And that's why, like on commercials and shows, people often start as production assistants. Production assistants are generally not covered, are not a union craft covered position. And so you work long hours for limited pay. But often, sometimes you make more money than you do in live entertainment. So, it's all kind of relative, but it's a good opportunity to figure out if you want to work long hours, if you want, or what other departments may be interesting to you,
Yeah, because working as a PA, you get to meet everybody in every department and see what the difference is between a grip and an electric, and what it means to be a dolly grip, and what it means to work in the costume department, makeup, hair, wardrobe, all of it. You start to see how all of it works and who all of those people are and how all of it fits together. So in addition to student films, there are very often film communities in towns. It doesn't have to be a very big town to have a film community, to have people shooting stuff on the weekends, to be doing little film festivals, to be shooting stuff to submit to the 48-hour film project and things like that.
Or like Gillian said, like in Charlotte, there's an organization called Carolina Film Community, CFC, where a lot of people go to network and really, kind of get their foot in the door and try to make those connections. And, a lot of times it's about being in the right place at the right time. And, I think if it's really trying to figure out what you want to do, because, I think, as Gillian said, a lot of people say, oh, I want to act, or I want to direct, or I want to write. Well, I think a lot of people enjoy that. Some people don't. Some people don't want to be on a stage or in front of the camera. Gillian never does.
Which you wouldn't know from as much as I'm talking here, but,
she enjoys, being part of the creative process by being on the other side of that. And, different people have different skill sets and different abilities. And, sometimes we've been able to find people with costuming skills that become great prop people. Sometimes people with graphic design abilities that have become prop people. And, sometimes it's about having the time and the opportunity to train people, to teach them some of the tricks of the trade. And, to be honest, I think we're always learning something ourselves, and that's kind of cool because, you don't start in props and know how to make a suicide vest. When Gillian made the suicide vest, she had to actually spend time researching and figuring out how to kill yourself and other people at the same time, which you know, a lot of great watch lists.
I was gonna say that's a
The funny story for Homeland is we were both coming home at night, and she had parked in front of the house, and I had parked in front of the house instead of her driveway. And I got out of my car, and she said, "Hey, come look in the back of this van." And she opens up this van that production had provided her for the show, and there is a box in the back of the van, and it looks like just a box you would get from a department store, that would have clothes in it or something that you purchased. And back when people used to do those kind of things. And she opened it up, and it's a suicide vest. And I was like, "You drove home with this?" And her first reaction was, And she pulls out her phone and
it was a business card.
I guess a business
I pulled
card,
out
right?
the business card of the head of the Charlotte Bomb Squad.
Yeah.
And I said, I have his number and I'm keeping it with me. So if I get pulled over, I'm just putting my hands up and saying, call this number. He will vouch that this is a prop.
Yeah.
Because I actually, I have to learn about not only like what foods would be appropriate for the era, but and what the electronics would be, but things like blood spatter and how to set the CSI scene, and what does blood look like when it's burned on a baseball bat, and all of these weird things that I have to figure out. And when I figured out when I was working on the design for the suicide vest, I wasn't sure I was wiring it right, because part of it was I really don't want to go so far down that rabbit hole and look at all of those things that I'm gonna, really like get my internet shut off. And
you're gonna get raided any minute.
I was gonna ask.
Well, by the way, you can buy fake C4 and fake wiring and fake parts to make fake detonators, fake things to make bombs, because they make them to train people who either build bombs, who detonate bombs, who defuse bombs, who are working with, at identifying terrorists and that kind of thing. And you can buy inert products to do these things. And so I had ordered all this stuff and got all the parts that I thought I needed. And I used my local resources. So I had called the Charlotte police department, and I had found out about the bomb squad, and I had gotten a hold of the person who's the head of the Charlotte bomb squad, who, by the way, was teaching bomb detection and how to defuse bombs all over the world. So the Charlotte bomb squad was a big deal, because remember, we had the DNC here, we had the Democratic National here, and so a lot of our equipment and people got really, brought up to a new level because of that. And so he came in to talk to me. I had all this stuff laid out on the table, and I had one that was put together the way I thought it was supposed to be right. And he walked in and we met, and he said, just so you know, if I didn't know that this was a prop, I would have backed out of the room and called the bomb squad, because it looks real enough
Wow.
for me to think that it's real. He said, and he pointed out what was wrong. Like, I didn't realize that the det cord has to be continuous. You can't ignite C4 from C4. The det cord has to ignite it, so it has to actually be a continuous loop. And I didn't know that. So, I redesigned it so that it will look like it wrapped all the way through. But it just fascinating little things like that, where it's like, I know so much more about these weird and bizarre. I've never actually started an IV line, but I can tell you what's wrong when I see it on camera, because I've had enough people teach me how to start IV lines to know how to do it right.
Wow.
So for you patriots or terrorists in training at home, just remember
the det cord has to be continuous.
It has to be continuous.
What a compliment, though, to have him say that if it wasn't, that he knew that it was fake. It looked so real.
And the good thing was we did get our internet restored shortly thereafter.
I did get allowed on a plane. I mean, I was seriously worried, because this was 2012, 2013, 2011, yeah, 11, 12, 13 was when I did Homeland. And so we were only 10 years out from 9/11.
Yeah.
And so I really was, and I'm the only Gillian Albinski in the country. So they know it's me. All the Google searches are my Google search. When I have to Google how much cyanide does it take to kill an adult male, that's me Googling that. So
yes, for all those Siri devices that listen to everything we do online, everything they watch, they know about the terrorist devices that Gillian Albinski buys, along with all the sex toys, all the weapons you need to kill someone during the apocalypse. But they may not know they're from Homeland, Magic Mike XXL, or The Walking Dead. They may not put all that together.
When you have to go into the porn store and say, I need one of each of your ball gags. No, they're props. Really, they're props. And I'm like,
And for
okay.
trivia night, Emily, you can ask, is that for Homeland or Magic Mike XXL? The answer is both.
Both.
No, the gags were only Homeland. The dildos were for Magic Mike.
Oh, yeah. See, even I get it wrong sometimes.
So we're gonna add a stream this week, and we're just gonna go through Gillian's Google search history.
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
You can't go to her website, which needs a little updating, though, GillianAlbinski.com, and you can see links to a lot of photos and some trailers for things if you want to check it out, and you can see some of the things she's done over the years. I don't know if you'll see the TSA search or the Department of Homeland record for her.
Probably not, but yeah.
Thank you for bringing up her website. I meant to ask that before. To share with everybody. I'm pulling it up now. Ooh.
Wow, pretty amazing technology.
He built it, by the way.
Well,
to give props.
no, I didn't build it.
You
I did
fixed
some
it.
work on it. Yeah.
Here, I'm going to show everybody real quick
Ooh,
so they know what to look for.
there you go.
Yeah.
There it is.
And there she is, right there, sitting there on the set
Right
of Life
here, yeah.
with a photo by Gene Page, right?
Yeah.
That's the one. I like that picture.
Thank you. I like that one too.
So yeah.
That was-
Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
I was just going to say it's GillianAlbinski.com for anybody who wants to look it up.
Gillian with a G and Albinski with an I.
That's right. Just like it says right there. And anyway,
Well, it's on the internet. It must be true.
That's right. That's right.
you also have an IMDb, I believe, so people can find you there as well.
Mm-hmm. I think that's pretty much up to date. I haven't checked it lately.
I know.
I didn't know if you know, but you have to actually update your own IMDb.
Oh,
Sometimes productions do it,
Sometimes.
and
And sometimes people get it wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I have had people listed as a prop master on shows that I was a prop master on. I'm like, I can assure you no.
I do not want credit for that one. There is a costume designer out there named Emily Kramer that's spelled exactly the same as me, my name. And I have been mistaken for that person, whoever she is out there, my evil twin or whatever. And I think she had a costuming job on like Stranger Things or something like that. It was a show that I've seen. And
right.
and I kind of wished that it was me, but it wasn't me.
Well, fortunately, Douglas Young is a very common name. There's a lot of IMDb entries in it, and also when I was back in live entertainment, I used to have Google alerts set up for my name because I'd often get quoted in the media for things, and so I'd always want to get a heads up about what they got quoted wrong in articles. And the other advantage of setting up Google alerts on yourself when you have a very common name is you get to find out how you die about once a week when you have a very common name. It's like, oh, look, how did I die in that obituary? It's fantastic.
Just mourn yourself every single week.
Or go, wow. It's just like MacGruber or something, right? Every time. It's just like, I didn't get out of that one. I didn't see that coming.
Well, thank you guys for doing this tonight. This was so much fun. I learned a ton. And, we've talked a lot about the industry before, but I still learned quite a bit tonight. I want to open it up real quick to our chat to see if anybody else had any questions before we wrap up. Unless you had anything else you wanted to add.
No, I think Gillian and Emily are going to put those designs for your at-home suicide vest. It'll be kind of
for $9.99 you can buy.
That's right.
No, you can't be charged if you give it away.
Oh, right.
It's a donation. We call it a donation. Yeah. Capona says thank you for your time, Gillian and Douglas. Caponis is one of our moderators. So he watches the chat, makes sure everybody behaves, and checks for spam bots and things like that.
Well, we've been getting a bunch of texts from people who apparently have popped in and that we know, so that's been pretty fun.
Yeah, I've seen the numbers kind of fluctuate here and there as people pop in, and
So did they fluctuate more when Jillian was telling sex stories from Magic Mike XXL?
You know, I was laughing too hard to really look at the numbers at that point. So, I don't know. We've got, what, 12 people on now? 10? At one point, we had like 15 people listening.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. It kind of fluctuated. I see some names I know, some I don't.
And since this is on Twitch, didn't you have Twitch?
Did.
You guys had Twitch on Magic Mike XXL.
Oh, did you?
Yeah.
I don't even know how long Twitch has been around. We're new. So, like Cap
Trey
said.
says he just saw Magic Mike XXL. It's when Channing's character Mike is dancing together with another dancer towards the end of the big competition in the mirror sequence. It's all coming back to you now, right?
Right.
Okay.
I'm gonna have to watch it. It's been so long.
Okay.
It is a buddy movie. It is a buddy road movie, and the dancing stripping part is just sort of like happens to be like the excuse for it, but it is a buddy road movie. It really is. I think more guys would like it if they realize that that's really more what it is.
Yeah.
Would you agree, Trey?
Yes. I have to watch it for other reasons, but you will. That's neither here nor there.
Well, and to be honest, you know, they did the first movie. It was Channing's idea that he and his partner,
Oh shoot,
Logan.
no. I can see him. I can hear him. I can tell you all about him, but can't remember his name.
Anyway, Channing was doing something with Steven Soderbergh, and he said he had an idea for something, and Steven said, "Great, put a script together, and I'll take a look at it." Now, to be honest, that happens a lot in the business, and what people rarely do is put a script together to take a look at it. I mean, they just like, "Oh, great, you know, Steven Soderbergh said I could put a script together," and they never do anything about it. But Channing and his partner, Reed.
Reed, yeah, you're good. I just got it.
It's Reed, Carolyn. Yes. They put together a script.
Sorry, Reed. I do love you. I'm sorry I couldn't remember your name.
They put together a script, and they took it to Steven Soderbergh. And Steven Soderbergh, in all his great brilliance, said, "Hey, this is great. We can't use all of this. We'll trim it down. But we can't get a studio to make money about male strippers." And so what he did was he financed it himself, and he treated it like a small independent film. And the brilliance of Steven Soderbergh, who really is one of the most creative people in the industry, most efficient in terms of how long he shoots, because he shoots and edits on the same day, is that he realized that he could not sell a studio on the vision for this project. So basically, they called in a lot of favors. The actors worked for scale. They made it for a limited amount of money. And after he had the film together, then he took it to the studio. And of course, the studio bought it and distributed it, and it made over $100 million. And so, you know, great credit to independent filmmakers who, you know, really just understand that sometimes a dear friend of ours, Judith Allen, who was first president of Blumenthal Performing Arts, once told us, she's like, for creative industry, people have a lack of vision. And she's absolutely right. Sometimes people just don't understand the vision.
Blinders. Yeah. This is the way it's done. This is the way it's done. It's like, you know, sometimes you have to do things a different way, find a different path.
Right, to get to where you want to be. And for Steven's, you know, brilliance in actually saying, let's show them how much fun this is. And they did it. And then when they did the second film, they had full control over it. And, you know, they had people like Donald Glover appear in it, and they had Jada Pinkett Smith and Andy McDowell, who we've talked about already, as well as...
Sorry, I looked at the chat.
I saw that. So I have a script about a woman who moves to Minnesota and tries to train a squirrel.
See, that's the problem. She only knows how to train chipmunks. So, you know, her fatal flaw is she shouldn't have tried the squirrels.
That's right. That's right.
It's a huge jump in species. Yeah, I don't know.
But maybe that's what brings it all around is even though she moved there to try to train the squirrel, she finds her true calling with the chipmunk.
They're so
this
cute.
Saturday on Lifetime.
We're going to have a whole new, for that, when we go through your browser history, we're going to have like a modern romantic at night version.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. There's going to have to be some serious beverages in whatever cups you bring. Or
That's right. They're just decoy cups.
I mean, if anything that was learned in the pandemic, it was that a lot of people should understand props a lot better, because how many people on their Zoom calls had tea or coffee in their cups as they sat through their weekly meetings or their daily meetings?
And spilled them into their keyboards.
There's that too.
Ruined their laptops.
How much vodka is in this drink?
I was thinking they were drinking more adult beverages as they had to listen to their bosses.
That's probably accurate. A lot more day drinking happened.
Yeah.
Happens. Depends.
Actually, more drinking did happen, especially during 2020. Alcohol sales soared during 2020.
I believe that. For sure.
And that was followed by the lack of alcohol in 2021, thanks to supply chain issues.
They called it Dry January, but it was really because it was a forced Dry January.
So sad.
Well, if we don't have any other questions, I'm going to wrap it up. This is the silent good radio that gets edited out later.
The good radio that gets edited out.
Right.
I keep waiting for more people to ask about the woman who moves to Minnesota and tries to train.
She's a mystery.
I think there, unfortunately, Lori Loughlin had that bad situation with the scandal, but she'd have been great in that, right? Wow, we could cast all kinds of actors in that role.
We could.
I mean, I don't know. I think Reese Witherspoon right now is like trying to option the story right now before it's even written.
That sounds amazing.
Nicole Kidman is a woman in Minnesota and tries to train a squirrel.
I don't see her training a squirrel, but okay.
Instead, she marries a farmhand who happens to be a country artist after a rare situation involving a squirrel. I don't know.
So Douglas, Gillian, as far as like social media things, is there anything that you would like followers or tell any of our viewers to go and follow you on?
Not really, but I think that
I have
you
the
should.
accounts, but I never use them. So
I think
sorry.
you should follow hashtag modern squirrel romantic. Actually,
Thanks for that.
Blow up. Exactly.
I have a question that actually is just something I don't know. Are you benefited in any way by us here in the audience today going out and watching the movies you've been a part of? Other than we could talk about it later.
No, we are employees. We get paid by the hour and the day, and we do not get any residuals. So
actors often get residuals.
Yeah.
Even background actors who have lines. Directors get residuals. Assistant directors, they get residuals.
writers, producers, all the people in the studio, but generally the below the line is generally who gets residuals.
Okay.
So we are below the line, so
Yeah.
we do
I
not
gotcha.
get.
And while we're talking about this, Emily, let's talk about another critical situation in the industry: the fact that no one wins awards for props of any kind.
There's no such thing as an award for a prop.
That
That
is
is-
a slight. That
There
is
are
a
no
slight.
props. There are no props for props, and actually, the awards, if you think about it, are
Are props. The statue you get handed is a prop, and yet there is no award for props.
This
So
is
So the
horrible.
person who creates Captain America's shield can't get a prop.
Nope.
That's right.
Wow. Okay, so
Right.
I know
Rose-
how we're going to change this. We're all of us and our future listeners on Spotify or whatever platform you're listening to us on. Go on social media, on IMDb, on Rotten Tomatoes, on all of the websites where you get your movie information. And I want you to comment that you only watched that movie and you only watched that TV series for the props.
That's right. And there should be an award.
And we're
There
going to
should
create
be an award.
We're going to create a new hashtag. Oscars, wear props.
Say that again.
Oscars, wear props.
Oscar.
We
Oh,
wanna
yeah,
know
the
what
hashtag. I
props are.
see it.
Come on, Oscars.
Not WEAR, but WHER.
WHEREPROPS. Oscars, where are props?
Hashtag make awards for props.
That's right. Because so if a production is nominated for an Academy Award, for instance, for production design, the production designer gets an award. And if they win, the production designer gets an award, the decorator gets an award, the art director gets an award. So the team gets awards, but the prop master does not get an award. Now, arguably, the prop master technically works under the production designer, but not really. The prop master has a lot of anonymity from the production designer and works more directly with the director and the producer and the writer and that kind of stuff. So in a lot of ways, it could be absolutely argued the prop master is not part of that team. Great. So why don't we have our award then?
Yeah, the costumers do.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
And if makeup and hair wins, they all get the award. But including special effects makeup, it's like all of these people get grouped together, but somehow in props, we aren't covered anywhere by any of the awards.
Truly the unsung heroes of Hollywood.
And yet when you watch like the opening of something like, every war movie, you do this pan across all of these soldiers marching. What are they carrying? Props.
Yeah, millions of them, right?
Every gun belt, that's all props. Every time you scan across a map and a treasure chest and those are all props.
Well,
all the things that they do for the promos of the movies involve props, and yet props cannot win an award.
Archer 33X says he has a contact that works for the Academy. He'll make a phone call. He's not wrong. He really does.
Make it happen.
Make it so.
Make it happen.
Hashtag props for props.
That's right.
I like that. Let's start that. I'll be posting that on our social media.
That's right. That's right. I mean, can you imagine? We've actually joked about it that if we had the spare time and the editing resources, we would take all the classic films, whether it's like a John Wayne film, of him going into high noon or whatever, and taking out the gun, taking out Rosebud for Citizen Kane, taking out the lightsaber for Luke Skywalker. It's like, where would you be without props?
Take away the lightsabers. And it's
I mean,
just a bunch of vroom sounds.
Exactly. It's these guys just moving their hands going.
I'm using the Force because that's all I have.
That's great.
Clearly, they all took lessons from Mr. Miyagi, wax on, wax off, because he had no props. That was what was wrong with Mr. Miyagi. He had no props for his karate school.
That's right. Well, thank you so much for joining us, guys. This was such a great night, and you're welcome back anytime.
Thank you. We'll have to join you guys and listen.
Yeah,
that's right.
Please do. We'd love that.
The hashtag's already picking up momentum online right now. It's hashtag props for props.
Yeah,
that's
already
right.
happening.
And there's Oscar wear props.
We're going to steamroll that for you. Right.
Right.
Absolutely. And, I can't wait for this whole pandemic thing to be closer to tame so that we can work together at some point. I think that would be fun.
We have to finally go and do the photo shoot.
I would love that so much.
That's right.
So
I would, yeah.
So go to GillianAlbinski.com. Go to all the movie websites and comment props for props, and tune in to Spotify. Thank you very much for joining us. We're gonna, if you haven't followed or if you haven't listened to us before, we always go raid another stream. What that means is we're just gonna jump over and surprise someone else with our audience and say hi quick. So the one we've chosen for tonight is the Stream Scribe, which is someone who does calligraphy and lettering, is very creative, and they're streaming a 14-hour Dream Stream tech giveaway. And I don't understand what that is, but their work is pretty cool. So we're gonna jump over there quick and say hi, and that's it. Thank you everybody for tuning in. Don't forget to follow, and thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Thanks so much.
Oh, what, Trey?
Oh.
I'm sorry.
What about our quote? Our quote for the night.
Oh, our quote. Yeah, I'm so sorry. I always forget this stuff. You go.
Okay. So, with every stream, we kind of like to end on a quote. The one that we found ourselves quoting the most often has been, "You have the ability to affect 250 people in your life."
How will you be influential?
Thank you for tuning in to the Modern Romantic Podcast tonight. Please tune in this coming Wednesday for our next installment. Thank you all so much. We're going to go raid another channel.
Have a good night. Okay, so they can't hear us anymore.